morning to everybody. Welcome to the June board meeting, 2025 board meeting of the IESBA. Of course, I want to welcome you to this meeting, the ones here in person, also those who are observing us or participating virtually. Very good morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on where you are, the ones who were not able to be here with us. I'm very grateful for the presence and participation of everyone. I know how much it takes in terms of commitment, dedication, time, effort, and etc. So let me reaffirm my gratefulness for the participation of the board members, be it in person or virtually, but also those who, and of course the PIOB member, and our official observers, but also those who wanted to observe this meeting and made the way to New York. And I'm speaking specifically about those observers here in person, including some former technical advisors and other interested parties, but also those who are observing us online. Thank you very much, and I hope that this is going to be a great meeting and that you will not regret joining us today. So I'd like to specifically greet our board members who unfortunately could not be here with us today: Luigi, Amajit, and Obichukwu. Thank you very much for your presence, and I'm sorry that you will have to observe this meeting at unsocial hours sometimes. So it's an extra effort, but I hope that you will be as active and alive in this discussion as if you were here. So thank you in advance for that extra effort. Diego, it's been some time since you lastly observed our board meeting. As far as I can remember, you are very welcome. We are very sorry that you could not be here in person, and we also know that it's going to be an effort in terms of observing these long meetings at unsocial hours. So thank you very much. Yohei, our official observer from JFSA, thank you also for being here in person. So thank you, everybody, and I hope that this will be a very, very meaningful meeting. And before I give you a brief overview of the agenda that I'm sure that everyone has already seen and studied, let me just share some comments and some thoughts, somehow to bridge the discussions that we had in March and the decisions that we made by that time, give you a little bit of a flavor of what happened in between and the developments in between these the 3 months, and make us ready to face the agenda for this week and the discussions that I hope we will have. So before turning to the agenda, let me begin by stepping back and recalling what was top of mind 3 months ago when we met here in March. And in March, not only during my opening remarks, but also throughout our discussions, we acknowledged the beginning of a new strategic cycle for the IESBA. We noted the uncertainty around us, the uncertainty of times, and the IESBA positions at a critical juncture. We acknowledge that we were facing both internal and external pressures, including the trends of simplification and/or deregulation, and all the narratives surrounding these trends. But in such a context, we also recognize the need for steady navigation in this board with a strong focus on the long-term relevance of our work. This was the conclusion that we took out of that discussion around uncertainty and around change, transformation, that this is the focus that we need to take. We also acknowledge some standard-setting fatigue across the profession and regulators alike, and the need for a period of stability while still moving forward strategically. And we agreed on a growing importance of IESBA role and the IESBA work on adoption and implementation support, and the need to turn our focus to thoughtful and strategically aware implementation. So this was more or less what we have discussed and agreed upon in March. And we also reaffirmed our confidence in IESBA's mission and the enduring, if not increasing, relevance of ethics in today's very complex and changing environment. So we began 2025 after the sustainability sprint or marathon, I don't know how to call it. We started 2025 with an expectation of a calmer period for the IESBA, following that intense sustainability work over the past 2 years. That relief or that calm, as our discussions show, did not materialize, and instead we entered in a period of heightened turbulence. That's where we are, and that's what we need to acknowledge and face appropriately. These 3 months since our last meeting, 3 months since our last meeting, it feels as though much more time has passed. While many of the March's challenges remain, the ones that I have just mentioned and that we have discussed, the surrounding landscape has evolved rapidly, underscoring both the persistent complexity we face and the quickening pace of change. Political, geopolitical, and economic volatility has intensified, and uncertainty has become the new normal. But its implications for our relevance and public interest role are far from being ordinary. This period has brought unprecedented pressure for us, taking us on a choppy waters journey. And at times, the intensity and even the pressure we experienced over these last months reflected both the inherent complexity of some issues and the genuine challenges that stakeholders, particularly the profession or those implementing our standards, are facing. In respect to these challenges and to these challenges among those who have to implement the standards, we are grateful to those stakeholders who constructively pointed us toward specific areas of improvement. In response, we have acted swiftly and assertively, repositioning ourselves when necessary, putting the necessary tools and mechanisms in place, and deepening engagement with stakeholders, especially the profession, to support sound implementation of ethics and independent standards. The agenda of this board meeting this week fully reflects that positioning, not only by including some adjustments in our strategic positioning and our plans, such as resequencing parts of our work or the development of simple and meaningful communication approaches for greater proximity and accessibility, and putting very practical and operational instruments in place to help stakeholders with the IESBA standards implementation, namely for the IESA, our sustainability assurance standard, but also by reaffirming the steady and long-term view to the challenges we face. We need, as a board, a balanced and ambitious approach going forward that ensures an increased relevance of ethical approaches and IESBA's mission, but also acknowledges trends and context around and listens to the constructive stakeholders' approach. In the next few days, we will be discussing some refinements in our strategy and approach on key areas, making them sharper and adjusted to evolving needs. This will be an opportunity for IESBA to continue focused on balanced, ambitious, and assertive answers that defend the public interest. And this means that where there have been misunderstandings, we are and will continue engaging directly to clarify, correct, and explain. But it also means that as an independent board, we should always resist to easy solutions and carefully analyze proposals and positions that cyclically re-emerge, some of which may reflect specific interests and limited interpretations of what is the public interest. IESBA is trusted to hear and understand all parties within the system while deciding in the system's long-run best interest, which is also the independent advancement of ethics standards in the public interest. And this focus of our mission that we will, of course, discuss this week explains, on the one hand, the increased outreach, as if it was still possible, and my own involvement and intensified engagement on institutional events in the last months. And this was not a coincidence, but a deliberate, focused response to evolving circumstances. And this focus of our mission also explains the strategic option under discussion. These past months have demanded much from our board, staff, and stakeholders. Since March, we have seen progress in some areas, paused others, and responded to external shifts that are reshaping our path. If anything became clear from these past months, is that the broader turbulence demands constant vigilance and adaptation from the IESBA. And that's exactly what we are doing. Today's agenda reflects our true and strategic effort to understand and respond to a rapidly changing context with agility and with purpose. Let's not be misled by the apparent lighter reading load of this less technical nature of some of today's materials or this agenda's materials. This is not a less important meeting. On the contrary, the proposals on the table speak to the IESBA's growing maturity as a strategic board and offer this board and our stakeholders as well, I would say, an unique opportunity to shape the future here and in this very week. The last times have actually been far from a smooth sailing and certainly not a breather that we had anticipated. The challenges and uncertainty, including at the institutional level, have been and will continue to challenge us. Yet that only reinforces the urgency of our strategy, which is to act decisively, remain agile, and embrace change without ever losing sight or giving up our mission and our long-term vision. This is what we expect to happen here this week, and I very much urge you, and here is my incentive for lively discussions, very open discussions, because we will be really shaping the future of the IESBA and of our work. So with this, let me just move to some important information that I'd like to share. So the board members have already received a communication from me, but for the sake of full information, I'd like to share that Luigi Di Nisoli, who could not be with us this week, unfortunately, but is attending virtually, has very kindly accepted to chair the IMAC, the group, the working group that we created, the mechanism, the advisory group that we approved in March to support both the board and the staff with insights on key developments related to the implementation of the IESBA. Thank you very much, Luigi. We know that you already have a very, very busy professional life beyond the IESBA. You have been dedicating a lot of time and commitment to this board, so this is an additional gift from you, and we are very grateful for that. Also, I'd like to highlight that for those who have maybe not noted it, that Tom Seidenstein has been reappointed by the PIOB for 2 hours and a, sorry, not 2 hours, 2 years, 2 years, 2 years and a half, 2 years and a half mandate until the end of 2027. And of course, given the reinforced focus on coordination and collaboration with IESBA, this is of course an important development. I'd like to leave here also the congratulations and all the best to Tom Seidenstein in his third term. Now, let me just give you very briefly some highlights about the agenda. I assume everyone has seen the agenda, so I don't need to be very specific about anything. But I'd like to highlight something important, which is that this agenda in this week includes the privilege of having two fantastic external presenters. Today, and immediately after my initial words, we'll have a presentation on the evolving financial regulatory landscape in Europe from Dr. Apostolos Tomadakis, Head of Research, European Capital Markets Institute, that I'll greet and introduce a bit after. And tomorrow, we will have a presentation on measuring and building ethical cultures, which could not be more appropriate to our work, from David Rodin, founder and chair of Principia, and Clive Garfield, CEO of Principia, which is an advisory firm that provides consultancy on organizational ethics. So I think this is a privilege to this board, and I very much ask you to be attentive and as necessary to interact with the presenters. Secondly, I had already mentioned that this agenda features important stimulus for serious discussion about the IESBA strategy for the next few times. So don't miss this opportunity. Be active, be lively. We need this board all together to agree on the future direction. Very briefly, I'd like just to say a word about outreach. I'm not going to go through the long list of outreach that the board members, staff, and myself have been participating in over the last 3 months. Just highlight that there were some institutional meetings, important ones over these 3 months, namely some of them, or most of them that I attended, meeting with the GAA in Edinburgh. We met twice with the Forum of Firms, very intensive meeting on very long and intensive deep dive on firm culture and governance in April. And then in Lima on sustainability. We participated at the CRECER event in Lima, Peru, IOSCO meeting, PIOB, Financial Stability Board last week, 1 week ago, meetings with PAOs, etc. And in parallel, there were many one-on-one meetings and virtual presentations in very many different places and constituencies. So it was a very intensive period of outreach. So, and I want to thank all the board members who participated in these initiatives, and there were many, and all the help and contribution that provided besides participating in these meetings, namely by helping putting together translated materials, slides, and etc. Sometimes in a very short time frame. This is a very special form of dedication to the board, not necessarily part of a board member's work, but that we are very grateful for, because it's very important for us to be close to all the jurisdictions, sometimes in the language that they understand. So this is important. The Planning Committee met in May 2025 and also yesterday night to discuss all these developments that we will have on the agenda. So good contributions, good discussions with the Planning Committee. We also met in May with SAC, with our Stakeholder Advisory Council here in New York, 1 day and a half discussing important trends. It was a terrific meeting in terms of the nature of the advice that we got, the diversity of people around the table, very much committed to bring us the ideas, the right ideas about what we should do, how we should do, and etc. If I were to take one area of discussion of this SAC meeting, was the discussion around the stakeholders, the SSP, so IESBA and IESB value proposition, which is absolutely critical for the investors and other users to understand the value of what we do, and therefore contribute as well to enhance the relevance, increase the relevance of the work. In their benefit, not in our benefit. Of course, we are not self-interest. We also met with the jurisdictional standard setters group, formerly named National Standard Setters. It was also a very, very good meeting where we, among other things, also received advice about a number of topics, but we also were made aware of the developments in the different jurisdictions, namely with respect to standards implementation. And there were some surprises, I'd say good surprises, positive surprises, because it seems that things are moving faster and boldly than we probably, it's not that we had not expected, but that we knew. So this information is critical for us to keep on working and understanding where and how we are needed and important. And here I'd like to give the floor or ask Ken to kindly provide some staffing updates, namely on our intern. Ken, please.
Thank you very much, Gabrielle, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. I just would like to introduce our summer intern. It continues its tradition that we have at IESBA, which is to have one or more interns joining us to help us, first of all, on the staff, to plug in some needs for support, but also to provide opportunities for the interns themselves to learn about the work we do at IESBA, and also to take a lot of lessons and learnings with them as they complete their studies and pursue their future careers. So with us today and throughout the week, we have our new intern, Ariana Lim. So I don't know if she's sitting at the back. Okay, she's sitting next to Jeanne. I'm not quite seeing her, but she's at the back, and yes, so she's really fresh, well, one of the freshest faces we probably are in this room. Really keen and eager and really absorbing as much as possible. So if you would like to introduce yourself during the break, by all means do so. But welcome, Ariana. I hope you find our board meeting really of great use to you. Certainly, we hope that you take with you as much insights as you can. Thank you very much, Gabriela.
Thank you very much, Ken. And if you don't have any other administrative issues or topics that you'd like to highlight.
Well, maybe just one additional item, and that's really just an update with regard to the staff Q&As that we have been working on very diligently relating to the sustainability-related standards. My gratitude really to all the board members and TAs who have provided input on these draft Q&As, as there's also a joint document that we have been developing, a joint collection of questions and answers on the ESA that we've been working with our colleagues on IESBA. Those documents now are being finalized. Again, thanks to all your input, your feedback, your very helpful guidance to staff. We are aiming to issue the Q&A documents by by the middle of this week. And Sylvia is really working very hard to get the documents ready with our communications team. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ken. So now it's time to move to our agenda and start the work. Very briefly, you will have seen the agenda. Once again, today we will explore the impacts of the trends in the external reporting system and ecosystem in our work. And this is going to fill in all the day. We will have an executive session at the end of this morning and then resume in the afternoon with what I expect to be a wonderful discussion to define and draw the way forward. Tomorrow, we will be discussing the Firm Culture and Governance project. I hope that everyone has seen the documents and the proposed way forward with this project. Again, very critical and strategic discussion to be held and decisions to be made. Then on Wednesday, we will dive into adoption and implementation mostly, but also address technology, and we will discuss and comment on the staff alert on private equity investments that has been submitted by the staff with a view to having it published very soon. And finally, on Thursday, this is on Thursday, and we will also make the necessary decisions with respect to the way forward after the discussions that we will have today. So important discussions, strategic discussions, and I myself find them exciting discussions because it's about change, it's about movement, it's about adaptation, it's about transformation of this board. So I'm really happy that we have this opportunity, which doesn't always happen and did not happen that much over the last 2 years, given the pace and the intensity of the work on sustainability which did not allow much space for these important discussions. And with this, I think that on time, I will stop here with the initial remarks and move to the next part of the agenda. The next part of the agenda is that part of the agenda on trends in the external reporting ecosystem. And as I said, we will start with a presentation from Dr. Apostolos Tomatakis, who is with us online and on the screen. And for that, I will give the floor to Rui Perjorge for the introduction. Rui, please. Thank you very much, Apostolos.
Thank you, Gabriela. So good morning, all, and good afternoon to you, Apostolos. Thank you for joining us from Europe. It is a pleasure to have you with us. Dr. Apostolos Tomatakis is one of Europe's most insightful voices on financial and economic developments, particularly on the role of Europe's capital markets in addressing the competitiveness challenges facing the European Union and the implications for the recently branded Saving and Investments Union. He serves, as Gabriela said, as head of research at the European Capital Markets Institute and as a research fellow at the Financial Markets and Institutions Unit of the Center for European Policy Studies in Brussels. Some of his recent work has touched on areas that we have also been looking at and that have gained increased attention from IESBA, namely the omnibus proposals and the risks of deregulation trends on regulatory fragmentation, namely, and a rethink of the corporate governance model and structure in Europe, including a very recent report on which he proposes a shift from short-run shareholder primacy to stakeholder accountability, to shareholder accountability, backed by enforceable sustainability standards and credible supervision. So after having participated in our firm culture and governance roundtable in Europe, Dr. Thamadakis has generously agreed to continue the conversation with us today here. We have planned around 20 to 30 minutes for his remarks, followed for another 20 to 30 minutes for discussion. Apostolos, thank you again, especially for joining us on a public holiday there. And well, the floor is yours. It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I hope you can hear me. Yes, good.
We can hear you. Can hear you. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much for the invitation, Madam Chair, but also Rui for the invitation. It's great to be here with you virtually and share some thoughts on the recent developments that we've seen or we're going to see with regards to European capital markets. I see also that you can share my screen. Okay, shall I tell you when to move?
Just tell us when to move, Thamadakis. Thank you, Apostolos. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. So just for introduction, my name is Apostolos Thamadakis. I'm a research fellow and head of the Financial Markets and Institutions Unit at SEPS. SEPS is a Brussels-based think tank, and I'm also head of research at the European Capital Markets Institute, a smaller think tank within SEPS. So today's discussion, and moving to the next slide, will be about the move that we are seeing in the EU, moving from a capital markets union to a savings and investment union. So we are trying to harmonize and integrate our capital markets. Then we'll touch upon sustainability omnibus. So the Commission recently proposed some package to simplify regulation. And then also I'll discuss about the corporate governance and share some insights from a recent study that we are finalizing. So the aim, of course, is to create capital markets that are deep, liquid, and efficient, where the same set of rules apply to all market participants. And there is also equal access to financial products and services. Now, if we move to the next slide, I mean, building EU capital markets goes a couple of decades back. There have been several waves in order to integrate capital markets, starting back in 1999 with the Financial Services Action Plan, the crisis and the post-reforms that came, also in terms of financial service supervision, banking union, the CMU, the Capital Markets Union, launched in 2015. There's also an agenda focused on sustainable finance that came in 2018, the new action plan, several communications and packages meanwhile, and also most recently, earlier this year, the Commission proposed a strategy, the Savings and Investments Union. In the meantime, European supervisory authorities have been also very active, a lot of advice coming from them, open consultations, external studies. ESMA, the European Supervisory Market Authority, Securities Markets Authority, is also expanded its scope and tasks, started with the credit rating agencies and trade repositories, now moved to critical benchmarks, data providers. Third country CCPs are also under ESMA's mandate, and also the European Single Access Point, ESAP, the new initiative, will also be under her task. In the last year and a half, we've also seen a lot of reports coming from Letta, Draghi, the Noyer, communications that push, let's say, the momentum towards integrating the urgency to integrate our capital markets and develop competitive and attractive capital markets is also the competitiveness compass that the EU Commission proposed. Last week, we also had a strategy related to startups and scale-ups. So there is a lot of initiatives. However, and moving to the next slide, European capital markets lack the ambition, the scale, and strength. Retail investors' participation is limited. We have a lot of different market infrastructures, regulated markets, multilateral trading facilities. There is heterogeneous and multi-level legislation, divergence in supervisory interpretations among the 27 different member states. We are also losing in terms of competitiveness and attractiveness with other competitors. And there is also insufficiently developed ecosystems. Now, moving to the next one, I mean, there is some progress made. EU capital markets and financial markets in general grew in size, but remain bank-centric. The CMU progress has been inconsistent and very slow. In the banking sector, we have much more integration, but still, again, there is low profitability, and the valuation of European banks is significantly lower than international banks and US banks. Now, if we move to the next one, I mean, as I said, Europe is a bank-based model compared to the US. Although over the last years, and we are splitting here the period between 2007-14 and 2015. 15 is the launch of the CMU action plan. We have seen some progress. Bank credit as a share of GDP went down from 100% of GDP to 87%, and at the same time, equity markets, bond markets increased their share in terms of GDP. So positive steps, but still, when we compare it with the US, there is significant differences. In the US, only 50% bank credit, and the rest, 150 and 200%, comes from capital markets. Now, at the next slide, and as I said, Europe is behind on equity markets. The development that we see is going down from 2008, 2009, where EU capital markets accounted for 17% of the global equity market. Now we are down to almost 11%. The other regions have gained significant. And this picture is also similar when we look at the next slide on fixed income markets. So also in terms of global fixed income markets, we are losing from about 28 to 30% that EU 27 used to account for. Now we are down to 18%. Now, it has been mentioned by the Draghi and the other reports that we should put a lot of emphasis on the innovative companies and innovation. If we look at the next slide, I mean, in Europe, we are not short of innovation. We produce innovative companies. We produce startups. In fact, over the last year, Europe produces more startups than the US. But the problem that we have, moving at the next slide, is that we cannot grow them. If we look at the financing sources suitable for innovative companies, which is the venture capital, private equity, crowdfunding, business angel, the pre-IPO risk capital, in the EU is only about 0.5% of GDP. So pre-IPO investments in the EU is 0.5% of GDP, and in the US is 9 times higher than that. And this also affects, if we move to the next slide, if we look at the number of unicorns, we have only very few unicorns, companies with valuations above a billion. Back in 2008-9, about 20 to 30% of unicorns globally were produced by or created by EU companies. Now we are about 7%. In the meantime, US is about 46%, and the Asian market is also grown a lot. Now, moving at the next slide, the problem is more holistic, let's say. If we look at other segments of capital markets, investment funds. European investment funds are small in size, 0.4%, 0.4 billion the average size of a EU investment fund compared to 2.7 billion, the average size of the US fund. And of course, the costs are also higher in the EU compared to the US. Moving to the next slide, we know that households in Europe tend to save a lot into bank and deposits and invest less into capital markets, either through equity investment funds compared to the US. So that's a big problem that we are trying to change. Now, moving quickly to the market infrastructure at the next slide. As I said, we have a lot of different market infrastructures. We have 27 member states. So this means 27 different stock exchanges, 27 different pools of capital. And the picture is similar if we look at the CSDs at the next slide, at the credit securities depositories. Again, a plethora of different infrastructures. And significantly less, but still, if we look at the next slide, at the CCPs, at the central clearing houses. If we move at the banking sector at the next slide, European banks are minor players in fixed income and equity markets globally. The market and the revenues are about the top 5-6 US banks generate about 60 to 70% of global revenues. And also European banks at the next slide, they have very low valuations compared to the US if we look at the price to book ratios. So again, we say that European banks are well, or at least during the March events last year with the SVB in the US and so on, we were proud in the EU to say that European banks didn't affect it much. So we have a lot of capital requirements in terms of profitability, but valuation and profitability is going down. Another area, the next slide, that highlights that we like to regulate a lot in Europe. So the EU lawmaking is very complex. We have a lot of rules, a lot of directives, regulations in terms of financial markets, digitals, significant also market infrastructures, green agenda, taxation. And also we have a lot of, at the next slide, delegated acts, articles, the number of articles, level 2, level 3 measures are increasing a lot, which adds different layers of complexity every time. Now, if we move at the next slide, as I said, there is a change now to move from CMU to SIU. SIU, what the Savings and Investment Union tries to do is to prioritize and to mobilize households' savings into investments. So as the name suggests, to move the savings into investments, into capital markets. However, it lacks some structural reforms, as we will see later. Now, at the next slide, and if we take a step back, it's interesting to see also how the Commission has changed its vision in terms of financial markets. We have the same Commission, the second von der Leyen Commission, which marks a clear shift from the first one. The first one was very much focused on the Green Deal, on the sustainability agenda, a lot of focus on the regulatory push, let's say, and now we are moving towards a competitiveness-driven agenda. Commissioner Albuquerque's mandate is to deepen EU capital markets, to reduce the burden that companies face, and to boost, as I said, retail and institutional investor participation to capital markets. So we have a clear shift from sustainability-led finance towards growth-led finance. If we move to the next one, I mean, the SIU, which was launched in March, has some positive elements in it. The strategy has about 22 actions to unfold over the next years. Some positive elements is the EU savings, investment and savings account. So to develop a savings account that would allow retail investors to participate into capital markets, will provide some incentives, tax-related incentives, so that they can invest more into capital markets. There are also some positive elements towards pension schemes and auto-enrollment pension schemes. They move towards funded pension schemes. But of course, there are some missing elements. There is no reform of EU financial supervision. ESMA still lacks direct enforcement power. I mean, a fact, for example, is that ESMA, the European Supervisory Securities Markets Authority, supervises third country CCPs, UK CCPs, but doesn't supervise EU CCPs. Another element that is missing is the equity market development. The Savings and Investments Union plan focuses too much on bank elements, with securitization, with EDIS, the Deposit Insurance Scheme, with the crisis management, CMDI, and not so much on the equity market. As I said, fragmented market infrastructure remains untouched. And also, it seems that there is the lessons from previous past failures. I mentioned here PEP. PEP is the effort, the product that we developed a few years ago, the Pan-European Personal Pension Product, which aimed, or the purpose was to provide a cross-border pension product that EU citizens can work and use. But so far, there is a limited uptake. So something that we should learn from the design options of this product and why it failed. Now, another significant observation, if we look back at the next slide, is the policy-making environment. As we move from 2015 CMU Action Plan to the SIU, we see that the use of references to impact assessments, consultations, evaluation is missing, is becoming less and less. And in 2025 SIU, these terms are nearly absent. So it seems to be that political priorities a bit outweigh an evidence-based policy making. And we can see that more clearly if we move to the next slide, and the sustainability omnibus. As I said, the Commission put forward a proposal for a directive, the Omnibus Directive, in order to address burdensome and overlapping reporting requirements in 3 EU laws. The CSRD, this is the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, the CSDDD, the Corporate Sustainability Due Diligence Directive, and the EU Taxonomy. So the Omnibus, what it tries to do is to reduce the number of firms in scope by increasing the threshold under which companies fall into a reporting scope, ease some disclosure frequencies by extending or postponing the entry into force of several different types of companies, and also introducing some limits on the value chain in which companies have to report. Now, although, as I said, over the last years, we regulated a lot and we introduced a lot of complexity, so it's necessary to simplify. Important is, and moving to the next slide, is also to not forget to address the root causes of complexity. Why this complexity comes into place at first place, which is due to fragmented implementation, but also the overlapping reporting requirements, obligations, and functions under these 3 pieces of regulation. So simplification is necessary, but we should do it carefully. And the main argument here is about the process. So the process failures associated with the formulation of the legislative proposal for the Omnibus Directive are too big to be ignored. The Commission failed to publish the required factual summary report of the responses of the call for evidence that they concluded in 2023. The Commission also neglected to publish an impact assessment for the Omnibus Directive. The Commission claimed that due to the urgency of the situation, the urgency in which it had to bring this package, didn't allow them to do a fully fledged impact assessment. And there is also a scant consideration for the fact that the three laws, of course, the costs and the burdens that it introduces is one aspect, but also we should not forget about the benefits that they introduce for firms and for the public and investors. Now, moving to the next slide, I mean, if we see in general what needs to be changed in terms of financial markets in Europe, the first priority is that to make sure that the set of rules that we have is enforced and is applied consistently across the 27 different member states. The problem is that the same laws that we have different interpretations. So among the 227 different member states, there are different interpretations of the same law. The different enforcement and supervisory levels of these laws. National competent authorities are also equipped with a different set of tools. They don't all of them have the same capacity to do their job. So enforcement is very important. The second is that we need to gradually move back from a rules-based approach towards a principles-based legislation. As I said, we need to, there is a need to take a pause, take a step back and consolidate more. The ESMA should also empower ESMA and the tools and the mandate that ESMA has, direct supervisory role in selected markets. In terms of market infrastructures, there is need to integrate and consolidate. We have far too many market infrastructures, different national pools of liquidity that doesn't allow to create one big EU liquidity pool. There is also need to simplify the legal landscape, the lawmaking process, reduce delegated acts and support optional EU level regimes, use the tools that we already have in terms of passporting, mutual recognition and so on. Now to the next slide, and coming to the end, to the third part of my presentation, I mean, in terms of corporate governance, I mean, we recently mandated by the European Commission to conduct a study on corporate governance and the elements of corporate governance that can affect the quality of corporate reporting in the EU. So we focus on a selected group of 10 member states, and we look at how companies, listed companies, report. We evaluate it, assess the corporate reports that they produce in terms of the information that they provide, the internal control systems that they have in place, and the risk management tools. How detailed is the information provided there? Who provides the assurance, and so on and so forth. So some of the findings is that fragmentation, of course, comes again. EU corporate governance landscape is multi-layered and inconsistent across member states. Internal controls and how companies report their internal controls, the depth of information that they provide also varies significantly across member states. Audit committees, they play a central role to high quality reporting, but there is, of course, discrepancies in terms of their composition and the mandate that they have. Board oversight, strong oversight and independence on one hand improves transparency, but in terms of practices, there is a variety of different practices across the EU. And also there are significant differences, let's say, in comparison with other jurisdictions. So in the EU, we have a much more of a mixed approach, fragmented and often lacking assurance obligations. And we came up with some recommendations or actions in order to improve corporate governance. And these are related to strengthening the ethical leadership, either promote national codes, or encourage integrity, diversity, and board independence, towards more clarity and support on board oversight, to define clearly the responsibilities, self-evaluation, but also trainings in relation to ESG, risk, digital developments, to enhance audit committee functioning and to improve implementation and coordination across member states, but also in terms of internal control systems and how companies, what are the international standards in which companies follow, and other ways in order to make it more streamlined. The overall direction, let's say, should be greater convergence over harmonization. Of course, there should be a proportionality for certain companies. One size fits all will not work. But also smart, cost-effective regulation for diverse sizes of companies, also take into account the different sectors in which they operate and the different sizes of these companies. That was my next slide. I forgot to tell you to move. So that's in a nutshell. I mean, we have done at SEBS in-house a lot of different studies related to that. Some of them are already published. Some of them are in the process to finalize. And I think I'll stop here. And I will be happy to take any questions and also hear your thoughts on these issues. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Apostolos, for this fantastic presentation. It's amazing. I hadn't seen your presentation before, so I was as surprised as my board members, but it, of course, met my expectations, not only in terms of the quality, but the topics addressed. And it's interesting, and I saw some smiles around the table, that you touched exactly on, even if it's a EU-centric or centered presentation, you have touched upon some topics which have been recurrently subject to our own discussions, reflections, sometimes anxieties, and incentives. So it's really amazing to listen to this, and it's also a very informative piece for us all, because sometimes we feel that we need to be more updated about what's happening around, to be able to be agile and appropriately address things, having the control of the facts and the knowledge and etc. So thank you very much for this. I will now, if you don't mind, if you are open to some questions. I don't know if this has been planned, but if you don't mind staying over for a few more minutes, I would open here the floor for some questions, and if there is time for that, I would have also one or two questions for you, but more curiosity. So thank you very much for being available, and I'm going to give the floor to Amajit, who was the first, I think, asking for the floor. Amajit, please.
Thank you, Chair, and apologies for not being there in person today. So just one comment and one question. First of all, thanks a lot for this very insightful and informative presentation. So my question was on the sustainability omnibus package. One comment is that Europe used to be the torchbearer, if I can say. Actually, in the sustainability space, many times we would refer to what is happening there, and it would motivate other jurisdictions. So I think what is happening there will have a collateral damage or effect, maybe effect is the right word, in other non-European jurisdictions. I have already started hearing in some of the debates here also, look what is happening in Europe and why do you really want to, step up? You just pause and let things be where they are. So that is one observation I had. One question for you was I'm just wondering about the impact of omnibus scale down, both in terms of disclosures, scope, and the number of firms and so on. What is your sense of its impact in the private voluntary space, where companies were not depending upon the regulations or the regulators for making those disclosures? Because there was a genuine demand from investors for those disclosures. So do you think that space, I'm just wondering how will it play out given the regulatory relaxations? Thank you.
Shall I answer or take another question if?
As you prefer, do you prefer to take 2 or 3 in a row?
Yeah.
Maybe. Okay, so I'll move to the next one, and depending on the complexity of the questions, I will add others or not. So David Ray, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for I would echo Amarjeet's words, the really insightful presentation. One aspect you touched on, which I found particularly interesting, is you talked about the one commission, two visions. So the second vision being one that moves to competitiveness. One of the things that strikes me is it almost feels like we're in a hyper-competitive environment jurisdictionally. It's not just the EU, it's other jurisdictions as well. And given that we're moving in that direction and we're starting to see this almost aggressive level of competitiveness where a lot of the things like the Foreign Corruption Practices Act and other regulation that's been there historically to protect the public interest is starting to be eroded or reversed in some way or suspended, or certainly discussions around it. The question I have for you is, in light of that, and this direction we're taking jurisdictionally, but also globally, what role do you think that international standard setters like ourselves can play in trying to maneuver through these kinds of challenges when the focus is really about competition and almost beating out everybody else at sometimes questionable costs? So I'm just interested in your view around what bodies like us could do to really start to address that in a way that's both practical but still principle-based. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Apostolos, can I take another one, or do you want to
Yeah.
respond now?
No.
Okay, thank you. Christelle, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for your presentation. I was a little bit upset at the beginning of your presentation about the comparison between the US and the EU. For me, it's totally different. So after your presentation, I wonder, what's your analysis or your impression about to what extent are the diagnosis and the long-term objectives shared at all necessary levels in EU? Because even if you have a commission that shifts a little bit its strategic views, the commission cannot succeed alone. So what is your view on the chances that there is or not a shared diagnosis, and then there are shared long-term objectives that would allow the changes to happen really, not only in talks?
Thank you, Christelle. Apostolos, I think I'm going to pass to you before.
Yeah.
Unless, do you want me to move to the next one, or if you prefer?
No. I can answer these three first.
I think you have enough. So
yeah,
please.
and then we can continue. Please. I mean, thank you very much for the questions. Yeah, on the sustainability omnibus, I mean, it's interesting to observe this development. I mean, over the last years, we were a bit proud that, Europe is moving towards that, more sustainable or advancing significantly compared to other jurisdictions. But of course, there are two elements on that. I mean, the fact that Europe, or it was a global leader in green bonds issuance or whatever is that on the different metrics. I mean, the one way is to be a leader. The other way is to make the other jurisdictions to want to follow your example. And with this now significant change that is taking place, I mean, it looks like the EU tries to undo what she was trying to do. It was trying to do the past years. And this would have significant consequences, not only for investors and the information that they have available, but also for the regulators and the supervisors in particular, that they rely on this data. I mean, the omnibus will significantly change the situation. About 80% of companies that were supposed to report now, they will not have to be report. There are also changes in terms of the value chain on how companies disclose information. So there is a significant, in my view, scale down to that direction. And of course, as I said, a lot of this is the argument is the urgency. We need to move urgently, and this is more to me like deregulation than simplification, as the Commission tries to do. There is no evidence that we need to simplify, of course, but the point is also how we do that. Now, if I ask the question about the competitiveness environment, I mean, yeah, we aim or we try, we want to make EU capital markets and the financial system competitive. In this environment, of course, with the current situation, we need to act faster. We know the problems. I mean, there is a lot of analysis have been done. We know what are the issues, but we need to move and implement the necessary measures in order to move and become more competitive. I mean, and you can see that in our regulatory approach in the EU. We mentioned complexity. As I said, we regulate a lot. And we also regulate not only a lot, but very often. A lot of pieces of legislation that we have, they include review clauses every 3, 4, 5 years. This means that every couple of years, the same regulation should be reviewed, amended, changed. And of course, the industry and the market participants will have to apply all these changes, also the supervisors and so on. So we are in a constant move of regulating. And this, of course, doesn't help our competitiveness and competitive position to other markets. Now, on the question on the EU-US, of course, we a lot of times refer or try to compare ourselves to the US, but I mean, I have also written a piece on that why the EU should not compare itself to the US. There are different, of course, the capital markets are significantly different, the structure as we saw, but also retail investors' behavior and attitude is different, the culture is different, investment culture is different, but also many other changes that the two markets have. I mean, instead, we should look within the EU. And we have successful examples of capital markets within the EU. I mean, if we look, for example, the Nordics and the Swedish market is often referred to as a successful example. A market that has high retail investor participation in the capital markets, the ecosystem, the startup and innovation ecosystem is very high. Investments and savings, the pension scheme and the participation of pension funds into capital markets also very high. So instead of looking in the US, we have better examples that we should use and look within the EU. And yeah, and of course, as I said, we need to clearly think what is the direction and where we want to go. And consequently applied also the approach, the regulatory approach and objectives in order to help us achieve and reach the destination that we want to have. I mean, we are moving a lot. Over the past few years, it was a lot of strategic autonomy. Now we are focusing a lot on competitiveness, attractiveness. We need to be clear what we mean by these terms and how, what does it mean strategic autonomy? Does it mean to close inward or does it mean to open outwards? And how to find the right balance. So these are my thoughts on that. I'll be happy to take more questions.
Thank you very much, Apostolos. We will keep you busy because, as far as I see, we already have like 8 people who want to make questions. So I'll move to the next ones. And I think it was Paul, the next one. Paul, please.
Thank you. If anything, just join colleagues in appreciating the great scoping of issues. Maybe just taking a step back and just wondering what this means in terms of how we interpret or assess what is public interest, especially with the shift we're seeing away from sustainability. Sometimes it feels like the urgency for action is not felt there because the adverse impacts, what we're seeing in a lot of the climate change, is not in that EU space. So let's drive competitiveness, potentially drive emissions, because we're not facing the problems of that. But when you see the experience in the global south is very, very adverse impact from global change. So how are we going to build a much more fairer and transparent assessment? What is the public interest? Is that only the interest, the public in your border? Is it only in your economic space, or is it broader? And just really just trying to unpack what is the way forward and what are the lessons that are learned, because yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Paul. Apostolos, I will take the same approach and bundle a few questions, okay, in the interest of time. The next one was Mark, please.
Thank you again for the presentation, a really thoughtful and interesting consideration of the factors. I was just struck by what you said when you were looking at Omnibus, where you almost framed the EU regime around disclosure, conduct and data. So all very logical and rational. But it's quite interesting that it doesn't include anything within there directly on growth as an objective. And if I think of the mandate, for instance, the US SEC, it's about capital formation and investor protection. So it's about growth. And then you also mentioned on when you were talking about the second von der Leyen Commission, how there has been less following of due process, but a more political steer. And is that a reflection of the fact that following the due process didn't deliver the outcome that Europe needed if it is to retain growth and competitiveness? And I suppose where that gets me to is that in our discussions as a group of international standard setters, what should be our forefront consideration? Paul's already very articulately put the argument about the public interest, but should we also have an explicit consideration about how well our work supports growth?
Thank you very much, Mark. Chana, please.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Apostolos, for your great presentation. My one also touches on, similar to Mark, on the omnibus on sustainability. So we see the political movements, but what about the investors, and particularly, institutional investors? I sort of read about the Norwegian World Bank. They have sort of said, regardless, they are going to consider ESG in the selection of investments. So it would be interesting to hear from you about the investor perspective as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Chana. Apostolos, do you want to take these 3 questions?
Yeah, I mean, all of them are in the same direction. I mean, of course, in the public interest, I mean, we have to be focused, let's say, on what we need to achieve. I mean, public interest to me means trust, how to build trust in capital markets for retail, institutional investors, households, to make them willing to participate in the capital markets. Public interest also means about having accurate, transparent reporting, data, quality data that retail investors can use, protection of investors and stakeholders, but also in terms of corporate behavior, for example, making sure that there is a kind of a responsible and ethical corporate reporting behavior. Now, I mean, the direction that the EU is taking is a bit, I think, largely this is driven by the political pressures and discussions. Some files are always pushed by few member states. So, for example, in the Sustainability Omnibus, I think that's mainly von der Leyen push to that direction, to simplify and reduce the burden, which for me doesn't sound what the Commission proposed as a simplification. If I simply removed some thresholds or postpone the reporting obligation by 2 years and so on, I don't simplify things. I just postpone it or leave it for the future. So the complexity will be there. And in particular, also, what information do I take out of the market? I mean, sustainability reporting and sustainable information disclosures are really important for markets, for investors, and for also supervisors. If you take out this information, then I mean, I think somehow the markets will not operate in an efficient way. The information will be missing. So this is the role that, I mean, also touch about a question from previously, what, for example, standard setters like EU, IESBA can do. I mean, yeah, how to promote global governance, to reduce regulatory fragmentation. I mean, there is need, we say, that to strengthen cooperation with national and international standard setters, but also how to strengthen the, let's say, the standards, the ethical standards for sustainability assurance. So to clarify independence, the professional skepticism in ESG assurance engagements, how to coordinate the different standard setters and the national supervisors, but also how to update, if you want to say, the guidance for technology, the use of the digital transformation, AI, and so on. Also, these are a lot of developments happening to that domain in terms of data analytics, blockchain issues that raises a lot of questions and dilemmas, let's say, in terms of corporate governance. So all these issues are very important. But as I said, I have the fear that we are moving a bit too, either we are moving too fast, a lot of different things that the Commission proposes, you see that there is the urgency behind. And the urgency, I mean, you know, haste make waste, as they say. So if we move too fast without critical and thinking principles and evidence-based assessments, then we are risking going in the wrong direction. And that can be have significant consequences that would undermine the competitiveness and attractiveness that we want to achieve of Europe's capital markets.
Thank you so
And
much,
I'll stop here.
Apostolos. Sorry, have you finished?
Yeah.
Okay. So the next one is Sunam, please.
Thank you. Thank you for your insightful presentation. You have addressed the existing problems in the EU and also areas for improvement. In connection with the last slide titled Improving Governance for Better Reporting, I wonder if the US has announced or has a plan to publish timeline for the change for the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Sunam. Vanya, please.
Thank you, and thank you, Dr. Tomadakis, for the presentation. Very interesting. I found very many similarities with our situation in Brazil. We are also bank-centric instead of capital markets. And it called my attention the fact that you mentioned about the importance of innovation and how Europe is suffering of losing the strong arm in innovation that it used to have. And we have the same problem in Brazil. And we understand that it is something that we should address because mainly in sustainability, we understand that the solution for many problems will come from innovation that will derive from small and medium companies. So you pointed the problem, but would you also give us some advice on how to deal with this problem? Because we want to address that in Brazil and bring small and medium companies to provide innovative solution mainly for sustainability. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vania. Sadia, please.
Good morning. Thank you, Doctor, for your presentation. You summed up a lot of issues that are relevant to our board. And in your presentation, you actually used a lot of words that we sometimes use in standard setting. It's important for me to just reflect and understand some of the words that are being used currently. And the one word that I would like your advice on is the word of simplification. So in your presentation, you used words such as principle-based regulation, evidence-based, and then you also use cost-effective. And then when regulators, and I ask this question from your viewpoint, when they say they're going to simplify, does simplification mean reduction in scope? Or does it mean reducing the complexity or reducing the tension that currently exists between standard setting or regulation setting? And I think it's important if you give us what you're thinking of is when you use the word simplification, we can also understand how we react when we get pushback on that factor.
Thank you very much, Sadia. And Apostolos, back to you.
Yeah, on the corporate governance, and I think the question was about more than the EU, what the EU aims to do on that. I mean, of course, it's very difficult for the Commission to put something. As we know, a lot of these governance or corporate governance codes or company laws or whatever is national, is up to national member states' competencies. So the EU in these domains cannot do a lot. And of course, the Commission here and the study that I mentioned, the purpose of it was to gather evidence of what is the current situation. The EU doesn't have in mind to propose something specific in that direction, but rather to collect the different views and the different cases, the different developments of how the markets operate currently, and then in the future, if there is need to act, they can do. But there is nothing specific. We don't expect anything to come in this area. On innovation, I mean, yes, it has been highlighted a lot. I mean, what you should do or what we can do in terms of innovation is, as I said, we produce innovative companies, but we cannot keep them. Why? Because the market is very small. The capital that we have is not a lot, because retail investors, they don't participate in capital markets. They don't invest into innovative companies. They keep their money into banks and deposits. But also institutional investors, pension funds, also they don't invest in the EU, opposite as they do in the US. For example, in the EU, I mean, I was looking at pension funds. They have about 3 trillion assets under management in the EU, and only 0.2% of that is invested into venture capital and private equity. So in order to go to alternative, let's say, financing options that support innovation and so on. In the US, it's completely different. In Europe, we have also prudential rules. So, I mean, the different pieces of legislation that we have introduces the prudent rule, in which, of course, to the name of the policyholder, pension funds, insurance companies, they are very, let's say, careful, and they don't allocate significant amount of their assets into alternative assets like that. In Europe, we have also the debt bias, the debt equity bias. However, we penalize equity holding much higher, much heavier than debt. So that's also another case that doesn't help in that direction. Of course, there are many efforts to change that. I mean, currently in the EU, there are discussions to introduce the so-called 28th regime. So above of the 27 different regimes, to introduce a legal framework that will allow companies to opt in to that legal framework, that 28th regime, that will benefit from more harmonized rules in terms of company, in terms of civil law, in terms of insolvency, bankruptcy law, and so on, in order to, let's say, create a more harmonized environment that companies can opt in and help them, let's say, develop and advance and grow also in a cross-border nature. So there also, as I said, refer to pension funds. In some countries, pension funds, they have some incentives, tax incentives or capital gains when they invest into innovative companies. We see that only very few member states, in others not. But again, this is a national competent power, let's say. So the Commission under the SIU will have some recommendations to that direction, but it's something that individual member states, they have to do. So there are many, many different elements on that. Also, we mentioned the example of Sweden. In Sweden, they have their so-called investment savings account, the ISK, similar to the UK and the ISA. So investment accounts for households, retail investors, that they can benefit with some tax incentives. And this gives them, let's say, in order to invest more into capital markets and fund innovation and so on and so forth. So there are many things that can be done in that way. Now, on the last question on the principle-based, evidence-based cost benefit, this is my feeling that we are moving a bit away from that. I mean, if I see, as I mentioned, also the Commission justification for the lack of an impact assessment because of the urgency. There is urgency. We need to act now. And to do that, we don't have an impact assessment. So what are the costs? What are the benefits? We don't know. Has the Commission done this exercise internally? They don't publish it. Why? I mean, under better law regulation, they should publish their findings and the impact assessment. So, yeah, there are significant costs that we can alleviate from the companies in terms of reporting, but we should not overlook also the benefits that reporting and sustainability reporting could bring. And that's my question also to the Commission. And this is also the reasoning that we put forward in a current study that we do for the European Parliament on these issues. So the process in which something like that has been put forward is really questionable. So, and I'll stop here.
Thank you very much, Apostolos. Well, I know that we are very quickly approaching the end of your time, but so I will not dare asking you or moving on without asking you if you have still a few minutes, because we still have 3 requests for questions.
Yeah, of course, happy to take them.
It's just for you to see how much interest this caused around this table. So the next one is Tomoyo, please. Sorry, I'll ask you all to be very, as much as possible focused and quick.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Doctor, for the presentation. It was very interesting. One reason why it was interesting because the challenges that Europe faces were quite common to what I face in Japan about market growth. But my understanding is the sustainability. The purpose of sustainability was save the earth kind of purpose, and not necessarily market growth at the beginning. Now it sounds like these market growth and sustainability are connected. I just want to confirm that the challenge here is about the sustainability reporting and the sustainability actions itself to save the earth is still continuing or active in the European countries, is my question. Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you, Tomoyo. Obichuku, please.
Thank you so much, Doctor, thank you for your presentation. So one of the points that got my attention, many points got my attention, but I would like to ask on the political priorities outweighing other priorities. So being that we are International Ethics Standards Board for Accountants, I want to find out, do you have any assessment of the ethical lens of the European Union, in the European Commission, the capital market in the European Union? What is the ethical lens or the ethical appetite? So because when we are talking about fragmentation of regulations, a lot of regulations, so what is the ethical stance, like the investors in the capital market? But when you have political priorities outweighing many regulations, you now begin to wonder, is ethics also considered in this a lot of fragmentation? So I hope you get my question. Where is the ethics appetite or lens? Can you just give us an assessment?
Thank you, Obichuku. And finally, Ken, please.
Yes, thank you very much, Chair, and Dr. Tomadakis. Thank you for an excellent presentation, very informative and very insightful. My question is really on the theme of simplification, and as you mentioned, there's a degree of urgency that's behind it. And I was wondering whether you have any insights as to whether within the policy circles within the EU or even at the Commission level, whether there's been any thought given to the merit and the value of global standards, because one of the major hurdles to simplification, and indeed one of the main causes of complexity, is really jurisdictional fragmentation. And as you mentioned in your presentation, there's a lot of fragmentation when it comes to regulation in the EU. But essentially, this board is a board that issues high quality global standards in the public interest. And in a way, there is a ready solution when it comes to many of the issues that are addressed in the EU regulation, in the audit directive, in the CSRD, that deal with ethical behavior and independence of auditors and assurance practitioners. So just some thoughts from you on this. And indeed, if you have any advice to this board as to how we could engage with the relevant policymakers within the EU, that would be very helpful.
Thank you very much, Ken. Apostolos, please.
Yeah. I mean, what we observed, I mean, from the study that I've mentioned and looking at the different companies, we also talked to different type of stakeholders, to companies, but also to investors, auditors, accountants, and supervisors in the different member states. I mean, the views on the ethical, let's say, lens or corporate governance, ethical futures and elements like diversity and so on, gender balance, knowledge, and of the board members and so on. I mean, you have a very different views. Of course, you have some member states that they pay a lot of attention to that. They follow the rules. Others, they don't see the benefit. I mean, it was cases, for example, where it's not about diversity, or it's not about the ethical lens of the company. It's more about, you know, the results. It's more about, you know, if we achieve the targets and so on and so forth. So there is a lot of different views on that. And the EU, I mean, there is not, as EU, as a European Commission, there is nothing to do on that, apart from issuing some guidelines or recommendations that national and member states can take on board. So that's very difficult to move forward to do something in this domain. Now, on the sustainability and the market growth, I mean, it should be, these elements should go together. I mean, I mean, if the aim is to create competitive capital markets and drive the growth of the capital markets, then we should make sure also that the sustainability requirements, reporting that we have is suitable and will allow companies to compete in a competitive environment. Of course, there is elements that a lot of requirements are overly, let's say, create additional costs, complexities, administrative, and so on. But there is also merit for some of them to reduce them or to alleviate them in order to create the competitive environment for the companies. I mean, also we have to be careful, in particular for an international investor. I mean, seeing it as an international investor that wants to invest in a European company, I mean, yeah, this simplification is also a bit disturbing in that sense. So do I have, as an international investor, the information that I need? Do I know whether the company disclose information? How this compares to other companies in the same sector, or things like that. So if we want also to advance compared to international markets, we should also make sure that we provide all the necessary information for international investors to take decisions. And now, I mean, on the last question, on the, let's say, how European standards aligned, or there should be, of course, there is need to make sure that we align the European standards, or we follow international standards as close as possible. This fragmentation between the different standards in terms of sustainability and so on doesn't create a common level playing field environment. Introducing stricter or more burdensome requirements it doesn't help. And there is a room, of course, and need for greater cooperation, coordination with the other international standard setters, and also need for greater communication, setting the same rules. I mean, also we saw that with the corporate governance exercise and the corporate reporting. Companies, sometimes they follow international standards, but a lot of times not. And that, of course, it doesn't create, let's say, a harmonized environment, a conducive environment that will attract international investors and make the markets competitive.
Thank you very much, Apostle.
Yeah.
Sorry. Thank you so much. I had myself a few questions, but I will not dare keeping you with us for longer. I just don't resist making a comment, which is very much linked with to these last interventions that we heard on this idea, well, fragmentation and etc. International standards. If you spoke about fragmentation, about one of the root causes of fragility and less development and etc. But it seems that when it comes to the time of really making consistent and convergent decisions in terms of regulation standards and etc. That is not that much at the top of the agenda. And speaking about the ethics standards, I think it's one of the cases where if nothing is changed, if nothing changes at the end, we will have, in terms of reporting and assurance, we will have a system with 27 different regimes and frameworks versus one international framework, which is not something that helps. But my comment is another one. And what results from all this conversation is that all those movements, dynamics, developments, etc. in Europe, of course, we all know, have been mostly driven by an idea of competitiveness, growth, development, etc. But sometimes, mostly in this area of capital markets, it seems that it is forgotten that capital markets only work if investors are there to invest. And growth and development only exists if consumers, etc., families are ready to put their money in the system. And that only happens if they believe that the system protects them. That only exists if trust and confidence in capital markets and in banks and etc. is there. And trust and confidence and protection result a lot from the knowledge, understanding, transparency about what happens in the companies and the funds and etc. where these people want to invest. So this is not new. It happened before in the capital markets union developments, that sometimes all the cards are put on the offer side and infrastructures, developing the companies and etc. But they forget that on the other side there are the investors, and that without the investors this will not be achieved. So I think that it's basically a matter of trying to achieve some balance. And the balance should be achieved at the same time and not balancing between one side and the other, because it may prevent some success. So, Apostolos, thank you so much for the generosity of your time, for the excellent presentation that you gave us, and the number of questions around the table really speak by themselves about the interest that this creates. And I'm sure that we are starting the week and the discussions that we will have this week much more informed and provoked and rich in terms of the thinking that we have to put on our discussions and decisions. So thank you so much, and we hope to see you soon again. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks a lot. Thank you.
So thank you all for the attention and the questions and the good discussion. We will now break, until 11. I'm going to reduce a little bit the break and resume at 11 for an executive session. So it's not going to be a public session for the ones observing online. We will come back at 1, I think. We will come back at 1:45 New York time. So we will see you there and here again. Thank you very much. Apostolos, once more.
Thank you.